Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for a great conversation around Web3 and how we can bring it to the next billion people to ensure equal access to education and work. So we have a really awesome group of people. I'll be moderating the session. And something we thought we could do to get started is do a kind of a quick round of sharing our name and one application of Web3 in the education space that we're most excited about, hopefully in like 1 or 2 sentences. So Nick, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Nick. I'm one of the founders of Invisible College. I think my application I'm most excited about is I'm still pretty jazzed about blockchain gaming, even though there's been some stir in the space. And I think the idea of being able to create a global minimum wage through games is a really powerful access point, even though it's not specifically education focused. That's what really gets me jazzed.
Cool, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Darya. I'm currently the president of blockchain at Berkeley, as well as the co-founder and CEO of Satchel. And personally, I'm most excited about the potential of DeFi, or decentralized finance, to reshape and redefine bureaucratic educational and financial infrastructure.
I love that. I also love sending around money on Uniswap. Very satisfying. My name is Laura. I am the founder of a talent platform for women to get into the Web3 called We3. And to do a different example, I love how Mirror makes you able to have equity ownership in anything. That was one of the first light bulb moments for me, that anybody supporting any product could potentially benefit from that upside. So that's my vote.
Hey everybody, my name is Nick Ducoff and I'm a DAO contributor at Crypto Culture and Society. One of the things I've been nerding out a lot recently is crypto custodial wallets for kids. I've seen a couple emerging examples of those, and you know, if we're gonna ultimately bring 1 billion people into Web3, it's gotta start with the kids.
Hi everybody, I'm Patrick. I'm the VP of Growth at Replit. And Replit is an online coding platform that makes it really easy to get started coding in any programming language, including all of the Web3 programming languages. Obviously very excited about what we're building, but maybe I'll share like the kind of light bulb moment for me too, and when I got started was with the Constitution DAO. And it's been a fun rabbit hole since then, so lots to share.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So what we're talking about today is how to take Web3 to the next billion people, right? And use that to increase access. And that can be a very abstract idea. So I think one thing we could do to just get started is maybe hear from a couple folks about some stories that we're seeing in our day-to-day work around how Web3 is increasing access or increasing the quality of the educational experiences and work experiences that we're seeing. So anybody feel free to go and share one story around it.
I'm happy to get started with an NFT example. So not always the most inclusive space because some of the ticket prices are pretty high to buy in, but one thing that we definitely see is if you do happen to stumble into a product early, and I'll use the example of Artifact, RTFKT, it's a metaverse fashion brand. See, we have some supporters in the audience. One thing that they do that's so fascinating is if you are an early holder of one of their NFTs, and their NFTs started about a year ago with a few collaborations of digital sneakers, other types of digital art, you could buy that as you could many NFTs for maybe a ticket price of $50, $100, or $1 for an animated metal pigeon. And that metal pigeon then gave you access to what is called airdrops, where you get access to new and different projects from the NFT brand. And that brand itself has helped holders create from that $1 pigeon over $500,000 of value. And so it's definitely a very motivating education about the NFT space. And like I said, it's not necessarily the most inclusive because you have to know about that pigeon, but for some people it certainly is a huge ticket, and for others I'm definitely curious to think about how do you apply that same value creation and reward to your early supporters and get the word out maybe to a more diverse set of early supporters from day one.
Yeah, I think airdrops are such a powerful thing. I think when it comes to access, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like there is so much high quality, free, accessible content, and probably more than ever, thanks to probably many of you in the room. And so the question is like, why isn't that free content that lives on YouTube, that lives in public libraries, like why isn't it changing more lives? And there and so there are a few ways to think about it. Like one is people may not know where to find it, right? The right questions to ask to be able to access it. It could be that people are lacking the time, right? Many people are strapped for time because of work and family commitments, things like that. And then also our attention, right? Our attention has been sapped, right? Many of you are probably wanting to reach for your phones right now, right? Like our attention has been taken from us from tech companies. And what I like about Web3 is that we are getting more tools in our arsenal to drive people towards enriching activities, right? Ownership, collecting are really powerful forces on the human psyche to want to do things. And if we can harness those with education, I think there's something really powerful to be able to increase access to good, high-quality content. Now, obviously, content isn't all of what education is, but I think it is a really important piece. I think community is another really important piece of it. And what Web3 does for community is it sort of supercharges it. If you've been part of an NFT community, you've seen the way people collect and get thrilled and excited. And a community that's bonded wants to help each other out and ask questions. Like, I can't tell you how many people we see in Invisible College who will come and they'll say, hey, like I saw this sketchy website and I'm worried, should I click on this, right? And like what the value of community is does someone answer your question quickly and say, hey, don't do that? Or hey, let me help you figure out what's going on with this transaction. And I think that's really, to some degree, where I think we can increase access by making community stronger. So that's what gets me excited.
Yeah, I think about this question all the time via Satchel because the main objective is how do you create access to DeFi for underbanked school communities, and I think the biggest issue is the current infrastructure that exists within DeFi and Web3 at large is not always going to be the most straightforward. And so you're taking things and applying it to communities that already lack accessibility to basic financial infrastructure, et cetera, and then you're adding another layer of complexity. So just to contextualize this with numbers, there's 1.7 billion underbanked people in the world, but 1.1 billion of them have access to a mobile phone. And so that's a large number of people that could really potentially be helped by DeFi, Web3, et cetera. Why aren't they using it? Why are they still categorized as underbanked? And the reasoning and the logic behind that is that these tools are not inherently accessible. Based on the user research that we've done, it's very likely that these people are not into DeFi, but it's also very likely that they don't even have access to a savings account, right? So first, you have to provide the accessibility content of, okay, here's the value of saving your money. And then you introduce, okay, what is a lending protocol? Okay, how can you save money in DeFi? And then how can you trust DeFi when you're trusting code and contracts instead of people now? So there's this entire hierarchy of additional levels of complexity when we're trying to help people who already lack accessibility to basic financial and educational infrastructure. But I believe that those are the people that can benefit from this technology the most, which is why it's always top of mind for me.
So the early stage of Web3 that we're in right now really rewards curiosity and initiative because it is hard still. And the beauty, though, of people that can get over that chasm is that they can work with who they want, on what they want, have the impact they want, and still earn all of which by having fun. And that's how the experience has been for me when I was rolling off my last startup after selling it last year. I was, unemployed for the first time in my whole career. I'm 41 years old. I'm not a, spring chicken. And I was connected with Bhumik Patel, who's in the audience today, who invited me to be a contributor to a DAO. And, the rest is history. And now I've cobbled together, a constellation of DAOs. I'm in Nick's as well, and others of folks that I see in the audience here. And it's really just because I raised my hand and I asked the questions that, maybe some people might be scared to ask. And I recognize I come from a great place of privilege, and not everyone, has all of the access that I had to be able to get started. And we got to make that easier and easier and easier and easier. But the first step, I think, right now is just encouraging people to raise their hand, and when they do, helping them get there to take that first step, towards what, can really become their freedom.
And I want to talk a little bit about kind of Web 2 versus Web 3. And I'll start by saying I think the things that get me most excited about Web 3, and I think kind of to echo the points that a lot of you guys have made, is that there's a lot of like fun and excitement and creativity and energy happening in Web 3. It feels a lot like kind of the early web days. And I think if we think about things that motivate students, make them want to learn, like pay attention to this. I think there's something really special here that's going on. And I think the other thing that's pretty exciting is that as more of the data layer is kind of moving to the decentralized blockchain, the application layer becomes a little bit thinner. So like, it's a lot easier to build on top of this shared infrastructure. And as a result, you can have a lot more kind of fast iteration, shorter business cycles, more creativity in the apps that get created. And what that means for students is you can move faster from the learning phase to the building phase. And if you look at like what does it look like for people to build on Web 2 today, like if you want to start coding, if you want to build a software application, like you have to set up your local computer to be able to run the right code. You need a coding editor. You need to like host the code online somewhere like GitHub. You need to or to store the code, and then you need to host it with like DigitalOcean or Heroku or AWS or something like that. You need to buy a domain. There's like so many steps that you have to take, and this can get a lot simpler. And when I talk to the engineers on our team, like even taking payments with something like Stripe, which is the easiest way to do this in Web 2, is still not easy. And integrating with Ethereum, taking payments on Ethereum is a lot easier. And with tools like Replit, we kind of collapse all of that stack. So you can go from writing code to installing packages to deploying and sharing that all in one place. And we have Solidity and other Web3 coding languages like on our platform. So I think just kind of breaking down these walls, making it more accessible to build and deploy and share your creations, I think is really, really exciting. And I think this is a lot more accessible already, even in its early stages, than a lot of Web 2 development and creation is today.
Totally. I think some themes that I'm hearing are community, right? Initiative, curiosity, ownership as well, like being able to own what you're building. And I think something else that I heard mostly from Nick is this idea of contribution, like the barriers to contribution being a lot lower than in a Web 2 economy, where like you either work at a company or you don't. And I think I'm hearing this theme of like, hey, I just joined this Discord, I got involved, I started participating, I started earning. Do you feel like the barrier to engaging with communities and contributing to protocols has been lowered? And how do you maybe see that in your work?
So I have this little 2x2 matrix for DAOs. One is open, one of the axes is open and selective, and the other is free or fee. And so an example in like fee and selective quadrant would be like friends with benefits. You have to buy friends with benefits tokens, and you have to apply to be admitted into the DAO. So that's a selective fee-based quadrant. Then a free open quadrant would be something like Odyssey DAO, which has got great Web3 content. You don't have to own an NFT or anything else to get access and begin contributing. Then there's something that's free and selective. That would be something like Crypto Culture and Society was in its first semester. And then there's something that would be, which quadrant haven't I talked about? Maybe open and fee. Oh, open and fee. And so that's an example of that would be LexDAO, which I'm a member of, which is a legal hacking DAO. It's only for lawyers, and you have to pay a fee. But it's open. Like there's no application process. You just have to, prove that you're a member of the bar, pay your fee, and then you're admitted into the DAO. And I'm sure there's more sophisticated flavors, but that's kind of how I break things out. And a great place to get started is obviously free and open, and another version of that would be Gitcoin, which I always point people to as a great place to get started. But I'd love to hear what others.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about contribution. So the community I run, we started with this mission of wanting to see 50% of Web3 leadership roles held by women and non-binary professionals and 50% of crypto asset ownership held by women and non-binary individuals. And so we kind of put that out there and invited different members of the community just to join us if they were interested. And we do a lot of collaboration, so I know we'll definitely talk after this. But in terms of contributions, what happened is a group of about 20 community members came together and said, oh, we want to get involved, how can we help? And that is the team that has now launched us only in the last 3 months. We have about 2,000 members more widely, but again, it's from the community itself that these teams are forming. And there are all these questions around, okay, how do you manage a decentralized team? How do you reward a decentralized team? Do you want to use an NFT? Do you use token? Do you use fiat in the meantime? And also this framework of progressive decentralization where you maybe need to start with a very centralized team. And so that was me and a few others. And from there, once you understand what you're trying to accomplish together, you can lay out more clearly, here are the actual roles and tasks, whether it's putting on a speaker series or signing up our corporate partners or developing our NFT. And then you kind of give more and more autonomy to the different contributors. And eventually, potentially, you become fully decentralized where everything is token operated and everyone knows what to do. We're not nearly there yet, but it definitely speaks to your point around it's so easy to contribute if you find a cause you're interested in. It definitely seems very different.
Yeah, I think an instantiation of how easy it is to contribute to the space is what students are actually creating and how much easier it is for them to do this in the Web3 stack rather than the Web2 stack. So like I mentioned before, I run Blockchain at Berkeley, which is the leading university-based blockchain organization in the country. And I am constantly met with these 18-year-olds that are fresh out of high school and are building these incredible dApps, doing incredible open source contributions to leading DeFi protocols in the space. And that's, if you juxtapose that with, for example, machine learning, where if you really want to become incredible in that industry, you're going to need a graduate degree, you're going to need a PhD in order to lead the cutting edge. Right now, I see 70 people around me on a daily basis that are leading the cutting edge from the ages of 18 through 22. So that's just an example to me of how accessible it is to contribute to the space from a very, very young age, as well as a very, very quick learning curve.
And then kind of speaking about like ways to start contributing faster and how we can make that more accessible. And I'll kind of share an example from Replit and maybe kind of starting from like, as I dipped my toes in the water, like, saw the Constitution DAO and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Let me check it out. And then from there, like started kind of experimenting a bit with NFTs and like following folks on Twitter and like getting excited about some projects and joining the Discord communities where a lot of the community is happening. And I think kind of plugging into these communities is the best place to learn, like rather than kind of reading the endless essays that are out there about the subject. But like on the NFT space in particular, like traditional like art investing is incredibly inaccessible. Like NFTs are already much more accessible than that, but still not accessible enough. Like, and there are side chains and things like that, like Polygon, that make it a little bit cheaper. But that's not where most of the activity is happening. But I think one way for people to get a taste of this without needing to like kind of take the full plunge, so Solidity is the programming language behind the Ethereum blockchain, and there's a really easy to get started template on Replit. And I'm not an engineer, and I've kind of dabbled a little bit in coding throughout my like educational and adult life, but by no means can like build anything like that great. And I'd say like in less than an hour, I went through Replit's coding tutorial for Solidity, and I was able to create an NFT, and I was able to deploy it to our testnet. And after I did it, I was like, wow, that's so easy. I put together a 5-minute YouTube video that I'm like, go watch it on YouTube on Replit's channel, like my first NFT, and you can see just how easy it is to get started. And I think this type of breaking down the barriers and making it easier for people to build and easier for people to contribute, to your point, I think you're going to see more young people building really exciting and creative things and leaving school and leaving university with more projects and more portfolio and more real-world examples. And I can't tell you how many people like our company has even hired from our community that have been coding for a long, long time. And everything that happens to make it easier for people to build real things, I think is incredibly positive.
This is great news. We're 5 minutes away from getting an hexagon Twitter profile picture. Yes. Exactly. Cool. Nick, I'm curious about this question for you around contributors, because I know you also combine both kind of more open contribution, but also you have positions like a dean of studies. Like, how do you think about it?
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I think we're still figuring out what our contribution model is. Like the idea of having anyone be able to jump into any position has we've seen sort of mixed results with it, right? Like it's like sometimes you have this amazing person who just wants to like jump in and shoulder a ton of responsibility, and then sometimes you have people who kind of want to be tourists and watch what other people are doing, and that's okay, right? But then that person who is really excited jumps in and has to then start managing a bunch of people who have sort of wishy-washy allegiance to the thing that they committed to do. So there's I think this there's an idealized version of open contribution that I think I've seen work, but I think there's still a lot of like room for experimentation around this. I think when we think about Invisible College, like we both think about, we have maybe a Web2 mindset where it's like, we still do think about our NFT holders as customers to a certain degree, who we have to provide a really excellent experience. And so we really try to make sure that we're getting experts in the right positions. And so, I think there's probably a range where like, there are some DAOs I've been in that are very contributor friendly, right? Like we're almost like the contributor is king, right? And then you can almost think of like a Web2 mindset where customer is king. And I think it's cool that there's a whole bunch of experimentation along that line. And I guess for those of you who are starting DAOs, I would say there are so many interesting, cool things that are being experimented and happening in DAOs, but you also don't have to follow what people started doing 1 year ago, right? This is a pretty new space that we're all trying to figure out. And a lot of the stuff that's happening is pretty untested. And some of it's going to work really well, and some of it's going to be so-so. But like, figure out kind of what works for your organization. And that to me is kind of the important thing for us.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So as we think about 1 billion people, that's a lot of people, right? That's like 1.7 billion people that are unbanked in the world. That's a pretty ambitious challenge. So I think if I'm imagining 1 billion people using Web3, that probably means that all of your user bases are multiplied by, I don't know, 1 million. So I kind of have a question for all of you. What do you think would enable all of your projects to have 1 million people? Like, are there any barriers that come to mind in terms of adoption from consumers, in terms of technology? What are the barriers that are holding you back from getting to that million?
Yeah, I have been thinking about this question for the past couple of months, just like night and day. I think that the biggest barrier to having applications like Satchel, which is focused on using DeFi to help underbanked communities, to having those succeed is taking people from the areas of traditional finance and education that are not crypto literate, but are maybe excited or crypto curious, to actually buy into these concepts and to be willing to take that risk. Because when I try to partner with a lot of different organizations that are maybe in the nonprofit sector, who are on the education side and have never touched crypto whatsoever, the first reaction they have when you explain something like DeFi to them is always going to be one of sort of resistance and fear. And rightfully so, because the headlines that we see on the news are Bitcoin being used for drug trades, which is so far from the reality and the all-encompassing viewpoint of this industry, right? And so for me, the biggest challenge is, in order to scale a product like Satchel, or to scale any product that sort of brings education and Web3 together so closely, is to be able to find the right kind of distribution mediums and pipelines. So for my case, that would be finding people that work with underbanked school communities all around the world and having those scalable models of, okay, let's partner and let's get these to people on the ground as soon as possible. When you're dealing with communities that haven't been touched by crypto, that is very, very hard. So I think there needs to be 2 layers of financial literacy, crypto literacy education education. The first layer is those connectors, those mediums that get you to the people that can benefit from DeFi, can benefit from Web3 the most. So again, in my case, that would be these education nonprofits, for instance. Once you educate them, once they buy into it, the next layer is if you're introduced to people on the ground who maybe are, in underbanked communities or they have never used DeFi before, how can you make your product as accessible as possible? For Satchel, that is constantly met for me, make it so that on every single screen, there's one main thing you can do. You're not jumbling the user with a bunch of different buttons and features. It's clear, it's very, very straightforward, but it's not gonna be so complex that they can't use it, if that makes sense. So making things simple and also supplementing that with videos, articles, et cetera, is incredibly important for getting to that second layer. So step one, educate the pipeline, and second, educate the end user.
Just to bring back what Eamon Ra was talking about, for all of you who were here before, he talked about needing to build solutions for Web 2.5, right? It's going to schools and be able to give them a taste of what Web 3 looks like. It reminded me of what you were saying.
Have people seen that image of an old screenshot of Craigslist and all of this Web 2 startups that kind of were created to basically take every piece of what Craigslist used to do? There's now a niche Web 2 startup for it. I think the same is going to happen with DAOs and subreddits. So anything that people are passionate about, there's a subreddit for right now. And if it hasn't already been created, it will be a DAO that collectively takes those people, gives them shared incentives to fix the problem that they're bitching about on Reddit. And that's the exciting thing, is we're taking the internet from just complaining to actually solving the problems. And that just gets me very excited, because boy, do we have a lot of problems in the world, but we also have a lot of smart people, all of you included. And DAOs create mechanisms to collectivize with shared incentives, collaborate, and begin solving those problems.
I think I see when it comes to learning Web3, there are three interesting things about it. One, it's highly motivating because to some degree it's financially lucrative, or there's potentially financially lucrative. Two is it's hard. There's a lot of Web3 is a back-end revolution, so there are you have to sort of get into the technical details a little bit to be able to really understand what you're doing. And three is it's risky. There are all sorts of websites that can drain your wallet, right? There are a lot of risks associated with it, and so to me that's the reason why education is really important to bring people in, and I think by sort of reducing those risks, and by and that can be sort of in the product development, but it can also be being part of the right community. It can also be through education. There are ways that we can reduce risk at different levels, but also increasing motivation, right? Showing people the exciting things they can do. What you see with games like Axie Infinity, right? Where it's sort of overtaken a country, right? And how it spreads, and this sort of exciting value proposition. There will be more things like that will happen that will just motivate people and get them excited to jump in. And as long as we don't ruin that by having people's wallets get drained, or as long as we can help them overcome some of these early challenges that happen with UI and UX, that to me is sort of the recipe if we can get those three things in balance.
Well, Replit recently passed 13 million total users, so we're on our way to 1 billion. And I'll just say too, I think what we need for Web3 proliferation generally, and for coding literacy generally, is I think we need to reduce the barriers to creation, and I think we need more and better and more exciting applications. We need more entrepreneurs, and we need them not just in the US, not just in the Northern Hemisphere, all around the world. And I think everything that we can do to make writing and building closer to remixing a TikTok video and reducing the barriers. And this is one of the things that we're really excited about and we've been pushing and working really hard on at Replit, is to let people start from a working example of code, a working application, see it, run it, see what it does, You can lift up the hood, you can see the code, you can make a copy, you can make a couple edits, and you can publish and share it yourself. So like really blurring the lines between like building and learning and sharing and creating. And I think as we start to do that and more stuff gets created that is useful for many more people, I think that billion number is going to come a lot sooner than all of us expect.
Laura, I have to ask you. You gave us very specific metrics, benchmarks, I guess, for what you wanted to accomplish with 3. Do you have any insights as to what it will take for to achieve that 50% of leadership roles held by women and 50% of crypto ownership? Do you have any kind of insights for us as to what direction we should be moving?
The thing I'm most focused on is, to your point around distribution and product, obviously what is the product that's going to help educate women and get them excited about working in the field, having the skills to be developers or involved in other ways. But also that distribution, I think that is something I think about a lot, which is what is the tokenomics tool that we can use to get every community member inviting their friends in? What's the consumer behavior that's already happening? Whatever we're talking about today, how do we get women to start talking about crypto and all they've learned about, what a layer 1 and layer 2 is, and that moment of just fascination, how do we get that moment to more people, and how do we then use that community to then reach more and more people? And I wonder sometimes, is community the new scalable software? And I think we still need to figure out exactly how that works and what happens when you introduce financial incentives into something you might do without it originally, but that's something that if we could crack that, I think that would really help us get to that exponential growth.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. So I actually want to do a quick show of hands. How many people here own some crypto, some token? Like, raise your hand if you do. Okay. Can you raise your hand if you don't, just so we get a better feel? Okay. How many people here don't own but would like to own some crypto after maybe this? Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to turn it over to our speakers and ask you guys, what would you say to these people? What would you recommend for them to do to be able to understand Web3, get involved, and participate in this new economy?
Yeah, I would say start off with like the most basic introduction to all of the different things that are top of mind right now in the industry. And probably in an hour, you can get a taste of everything. And then you'll kind of see what you might be more interested in. So first, I would say get some crypto in your Coinbase wallet, transfer that to a MetaMask account, set up your MetaMask wallet. For context, MetaMask is a non-custodial wallet that you kind of have control over your own funds, which can be dangerous at times, but if you do it properly, it won't be. If you want to start off, I would really, really recommend people playing around with a test network, which essentially means you're not dealing with real crypto. It's going to be like a sandbox type situation, so like the Coleman network or a Gorley, for instance. And so what ends up happening is you can go to a faucet, grab some of the test Ethereum, for example, and then go to really key tools in the space and be able to play around. So one thing you can do is go to a lending protocol, which allows you to sort of lend out and gain interest on your assets, and test around with test Ethereum. Oh, how does it work to put my money into this pool and earn interest on it? Then maybe go to Uniswap, and which is a decentralized exchange that uses an AMM model, and you can essentially test out the permissionless LP pools that they have there. So you can go around to all the different tools in the space, for instance, particularly with DeFi, and use these test tokens in order to be able to do that. So I think that is one thing that I always walk people through when they come to me and they first say, hey, I really want to get into DeFi, but I haven't used any tools, is start with a very zero risk situation on these test networks. But then after that, I would say it's really, really accessible when you want to even start using real money. So, we just heard from Patrick about how easy it was to mint your first NFT, right? So all of those firsts, those milestones get me really excited because people are able to have a taste of everything and then figure out exactly which of those areas they want to dive into.
So going back to what I said at the beginning, like crypto wallets for kids, this stuff has to be easier. And there are some emerging, very easy ways to get started. Everything that she just described is awesome, and I definitely, once you get your training wheels, recommend you do all of that. But how many people here have a Gmail account? Really, there are people that don't have Gmail accounts? But so I'm going to give you two options that you can create a wallet with just your Gmail account. Argent.xyz, which uses social recovery. You don't need to worry about your seed phrase. And then Kukai, which is on the Tezos blockchain. Also, either of those, you can literally create an account with your Gmail. You don't have to save a password. You don't have to remember anything. You can buy crypto right from there and start buying NFTs within those applications. And I think those are some of the easier ways to get started into Web3. Those things didn't even exist 6 months ago, though, so the space is evolving really quickly. And like Patrick said, it's in large part thanks to composability, which essentially means that people can build on the work of others and continue to make things easier. And 6 months from now even, I expect it'll be even easier to onboard.
I don't have a whole lot to add that hasn't already been said, but I will just say that where things are happening, where the conversation is happening, if you guys are not already on Twitter and following folks in the space or following even just the trends for NFT or Web3 or any of the stuff, you will start to see the conversation unfold. I think this is a great no money way to get started. And if you want to go a bit deeper for some projects that you're excited about, sign up for Discord and check it out. And you will
turn off your DMs.
Happening. Yeah, seriously.
I'll give 2 quick plugs as well. So tomorrow at the conference, I'm actually giving a blockchain 101, 40 minutes. Like you said, you can understand everything you need to know in 40 minutes to get started. And the other thing I'll say is when I think about Web3, one thing that helped me was just getting a sense of the big picture and how everything fit in. And the way I think about it is just 5 things you need to know. One is blockchain infrastructure. That's the technology underlying all the different use cases we talk about. And on top of that, you have cryptocurrencies, DeFi, decentralized finance, the applications that Darya has been speaking about. You have NFTs, you have the metaverse and all the stuff that happens there. And then you have DAOs, these new organizational concepts. And if you just kind of understand even just those 5 concepts, that I think will give you pretty much everything you know to at least contextualize everything and feel more confident. And you can also obviously go check out We3 for all of the Web3 101 content you need, and you can get that code over there on the posters.
I'll share how I got into Web3. And I think this is the #1 piece of advice that I would give people is find a helpful friend. Don't do it alone. I did not have to wait for Coinbase to send my money to some other wallet because someone just sent me money to a wallet and I Venmo'd them back. I didn't have to figure out if I was sending my money into the wrong DeFi protocol because a friend screen shared with me and walked through the whole thing with me. So one message for those of you who have bought crypto assets, be a good friend to those people who didn't, right? And who want to get in. We do something at Invisible College called ride-alongs, which is cool, you want to put your money into Luna and stake stablecoins and get 20% on them. This is step-by-step how to do it, right? A lot of learning is just visual. You have to be able to see it and follow it along. And so do it in a community, do it with friends, do it with where if something goes wrong, you can ask somebody's help. Because these things are hard. And learning how a blockchain works is important, but it's not it's not the first thing that you need. You need to be able to experience the excitement of it first, and then learn why are you so excited and how is all this working. So it's there's sort of an order of operations I think that'll help get people jazzed.
Awesome. I think that's a great note to end this with. Thank you all for joining, and thank you all for listening to us. If you want to engage with us, we can keep the conversation happening outside in the hallways. And yeah, thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Alberto.
Great job, y'all.